So, according to reports in closed door testimony with the House Intelligence Committee, former Attorney General under Barack Obama, Loretta Lynch, admits that none of the intel agency, whether it be from Obama's DOJ or FBI, ever gave Trump a defensive briefing that foreign influencers like Russia were trying to connect to people involved in his campaign, which is going to be a huge story. Now, first, let me say that this is just an allegation. Until we can see the actual documents, we should take it with a grain of salt. However, this is being reported by Sara Carter at saracarter.com, and she's been really good on the Russia investigation so far, so this is all the more reason for us to be as transparent as possible and see all these documents, because, again, as I've been saying, if we have Obama's intel agencies being weaponized to go after Trump, it is the biggest political scandal in the history of this country. Now, the allegation's important because according to Lynch's testimony, she was aware that there was supposed problems with Carter Page and that Russians were contacting him. And she knew that Carter Page was part of Trump's campaign. So the question then becomes, why wouldn't you go to Trump and say, hey, there's at least one member of your team that might be being influenced by Russian spies. You should be careful. This is par for the course. This is what normally happens when there's attempts at influences in campaigns or politicians. The intel agency that finds this out goes to that politician and says, be careful, we don't want these foreign influencers being part of your campaign. In fact, we saw this with Diane Feinstein. Now, Feinstein, for over 10 years, employed a driver that turned out to be a Chinese spy. During that time, she encouraged many policies that were favorable towards China. Yet the FBI didn't say, I know, we'll send spies into Feinstein's campaign, not tell her, and try to nail her as somehow being connected to being in collusion with China. Instead, they arrested the spy, went to Feinstein, and said, please be careful, the Chinese are trying to influence people around you. That's what's normally the case. That's what you would do if you're actually an intel agency that's concerned about foreign influence. Now, if you were an intel agency that was instead concerned about keeping a certain political candidate out of office, instead of being concerned that there could have been connections to foreign influencers around them, you would try to use that as an excuse to spy on that person, raid their office, their lawyer's office in the middle of the night, go after crimes that they committed from 10 years past, etc., in an attempt to get them from being elected, or even after elected, from getting them to be able to finish out their term or to be effective during their term. And it's the latter that the intelligence agencies decided to take. Now, combine Lynch's supposed testimony with now the transcripts of Lisa Page. I did a video yesterday you should check out about Lisa Page and how her story is a huge bombshell into how the FBI was considering charging Hillary Clinton, but then Loretta Lynch and Obama's DOJ said, no, don't charge them because we're not going to go after them anyways. Which is terrible because Lynch supposedly recused herself, etc. But another portion of this is she's admitting all the while that they never had any evidence, even up until May of 2017, that Trump was involved in any sort of shenanigans with Russians or any other foreign country. In fact, they just had assertions that maybe people on the periphery of him may have had contact with Russians, but they never had hard proof, even after months that they were involved in the investigation. So if that's the case, think about this. Let's say that hypothetically, even though I don't believe that there was any Russia collusion and none's been proven by the Mueller investigation, and it looks as if it's going to end without being able to prove that anyone connected to Trump colluded with Russians. But let's say hypothetically that there were, like Manafort and Page and Flynn and other people connected to Trump were actually involved with Russians. Now, we have Page and Lynch both basically admitting that they had no proof that Trump himself was involved in this. So why wouldn't the intel agencies go to someone who could be the president of the United States and say, hey, we're worried. There are people around you that could be connected to Russians. There's only two reasons that they wouldn't do that. One is they have direct evidence that Trump himself may be involved with those Russians, and so you don't want to alert him to that you're investigating him. But we know even from Comey's testimony that Trump wasn't a target of the investigation up until the point where Comey was fired. So even up until that point, and according to Page, we see that there was no proof. And that's further buttressed by the fact that it seems that Mueller's not going to have any proof that Trump was directly tied to collusion in any way. So given all three of those things, it seems likely that this excuse is out the window. So there's only one other reason that the FBI and the DOJ and other intelligence agencies wouldn't warn Trump that they thought that people connected to him might be influenced by Russian agents. And that is because they wanted to use that as an excuse to bring Trump down. If that's what we're allowing our intel agencies to do, then we have a huge problem that's bigger than any influence that any foreign country could have on us. Because what that means is they're now able to arbitrarily spy on, wiretap, attack, launch investigations, including raiding lawyers in the middle of the night, to any politician that they dislike by merely saying, hey, we think that someone periphery to them was contacted by a foreigner at some point. That's it. That's all we need to be able to put wiretaps, to spy, all of these things. And that means that we don't have a free election system. Now, people ask me, why do you harp on this Russia investigation so much? Like, I ran for office and I talked about all the things that I want to see as people connected to me in rural Pennsylvania and rural Americans and how our voice isn't heard. But the very first thing we need to have our voice heard is we need elections to be fair. We need it to be a process that's reasonable, that if we choose someone that we feel represents us and they're duly elected, that they're allowed to obtain office. If we have an intel agency that says, no, only people we approve of will be allowed to obtain office, and if we screw up and they do obtain office, then we'll do everything in our power to take them down, and they're allowed to arbitrarily spy and go after people because someone connected to them was contacted by a foreign agent at some point, then that means we no longer have a voice. We're only allowed to pick from the pre-approved candidates that the intel agencies approve of. That should concern you whether you're on the left or the right. Even if you hate Donald Trump, you should be disgusted by this and see how big of a danger it is. Again, this is more control and influence. This is the biggest intel and investigative agency in the history of the world. And the fact that it's acting as an unelected bureau that acts as kingmaker, in this case was working with Barack Obama as part of Barack Obama's administration to go after his political opponent. That's more damage than Russia, China, the UK, Israel, Iran, etc. Any country in the world could ever do. It's direct influence taking away our voice as Americans. So again, the story's real simple. If this is true, Lynch is saying they never gave a defensive briefing to Trump. This is counter to what they do every other time almost, where they warned Feinstein, for example. You know, the real question, and I'll link the article below that Sara Carter's asking the questions, is someone needs to ask Loretta Lynch the next time she's in front of Congress, did you give Hillary any defensive briefings? Because if she did, that 100% proves, and it's the final nail in the coffin, the FBI was acting as a weapon for the Democratic Party, because they're going to Hillary and giving her defensive briefings saying, hey, there could be foreign influencers trying to get involved or trying to find stuff out about your campaign. But supposedly they were more worried about that with the Trump campaign, and they didn't give Trump that kind of defensive briefing. So just another example, and I think we're going to start to see more and more of this. This Russia collusion investigation was a hoax from the get-go. It was a witch hunt designed to stymie Trump. Chuck Schumer told us it was because Trump dared to criticize the intel community, and Schumer told us that they'd find 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at him. The whole investigation was about having an excuse to look into Trump's past, to people connected to Trump, and to find any crime whatsoever because they knew there was no Russia collusion. And now we see that it looks like Mueller's not going to be able to find anything. So Schiff, who's now in charge of the House Oversight Committee, saying, we're going to send out 81 subpoenas to everyone connected to Trump in any possible way and keep digging because we need to come up with something. Trump's big crime was he beat Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton was the anointed aristocrat that was supposed to be the next president. And we need to fight this type of corruption, because if we don't, then we've lost our country completely. So, hey, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Click the bell button so you get alerts when I put out videos. I'm going to be doing videos more probably today. I won't be doing my regular scheduled live stream tomorrow because I have some work obligations, so I may do it later in the day, or I might do it Saturday morning instead. So I'll keep posting updated what that is. But thanks so much, and have a good one.